All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we've got a stack of research that is, I think, going to fundamentally challenge the vocabulary you use to describe your own inner life.
Oh, this one's a heavy hitter.
It really is. We're looking at a fascinating piece called Molecular Divinity, the chemical foundation of spirit.
Yeah, and it's one of those topics that, it seems like it's just about words at first, semantic.
Yeah.
But once you get into it, you realize we're talking about the fundamental architecture of reality.
Exactly. The whole mission of this deep dive is to basically dismantle a metaphor that we have all just completely bought into. I mean, you scroll through Instagram, you listen to almost any modern spiritual talk, and what do you hear? It's all good vibes, high frequency, energy shifts.
I'm vibrating at a higher level.
Yeah.
Or we have an electric connection. That place has bad energy. That kind of thing.
Right. We talk about the soul and the spirit as if they're electrical. But the argument here is that we've just been fooled by our own history. And the thesis is, well, it's pretty stark. The spirit is not electrical. It's chemical.
It's chemical. And that one little distinction, that one word, changes everything about how we understand the sacred.
It really does. And it sounds like a bit of a buzzkill at first, doesn't it? Replacing this, mystical energy with chemistry.
Totally. It sounds so clinical.
But the source argues, and I think really convincingly, that chemistry is actually far more profound and more intimate and spiritual than electricity ever could be.
Okay, so to understand why we're even having this debate, we have to look at the history, right?
Yeah.
Why are we so obsessed with vibes and frequencies in the first place?
Well, it's the Victorian-era trap. The source does a great job of contextualizing this. Think about the late 19th century.
Okay.
You've got the sudden arrival of the telegraph, the light bulb, the radio, and all of a sudden there's this invisible force electricity that can carry voices across continents and, banish the dark. It was the miracle of the age.
It was literally magic to the average person. You just flip a switch and light appears out of nowhere. Precisely. So when people try to describe the ineffable, the soul, ghosts, a deep spiritual connection, they reach for the most powerful metaphor they had. And they assumed the spirit must work like a radio or a telegraph.
So we started imagining hidden currents and tuning in to people's frequencies.
We built a model of the soul based on the technology of 1890.
Wow.
We did. But the source makes a really critical distinction here. It says that was an image, not a structure. We know now the body doesn't work like a copper wire. I mean, yes, there are electrical signals, action potentials in neurons, but the actual texture of experience, the feeling of the spirit, it's wet, it's fluid.
It's chemical.
It's chemical.
Let's dig into that wetness, because that's where the science gets really, really interesting. The source breaks down the biology of emotion. It argues that while a thought might be an electrical spark, the emotion itself is a chemical cascade.
Right. And just think about the speed. Electricity is almost instantaneous. It's a spark. But emotions, they linger, they wash over you, they recede.
No, that's a good point.
That's the behavior of a fluid, not a current. The source uses fear as a prime example. You might see a threat. That's the quick visual electrical signal. But the feeling of fear, that's adrenaline dumping into your bloodstream.
It's visceral.
It's cortisol binding to receptors in your chest and your stomach. We even say things like, my blood ran cold, or I was sweating with fear. Those are fluid descriptions.
You're right. We don't say, I had a fear spark.
Exactly. If the spirit were just electrical, you'd just switch on and off like a lamp. But you don't. You simmer with anger. You wallow in sadness. These are all liquid metaphors, because the mechanism is liquid.
So what about something like love? That's the ultimate spiritual experience for a lot of people.
Sure, we say there was a spark. Right, that's the rom-com line.
Right.
But the reality is oxytocin. And oxytocin isn't a vibration or a frequency. It's a peptide hormone. It's a physical molecule that acts like a key fitting into a very specific lock.
And it travels through your blood.
Through your blood. When you hug someone you trust or bond with your child, oxytocin is released, and it literally physically binds you together on a molecular level. It changes your heart rate, your skin temperature, your pain threshold.
So when people talk about having chemistry with someone, they're accidentally being more accurate than when they say electricity.
So much more accurate.
Yeah.
And look at sorrow. The source describes deep sadness, even depression, not as a low frequency, but as a chemical imbalance, often involving serotonin. It's a change in the viscosity of your perception. The world feels heavier.
Grayer.
Exactly. And that's a material change in how your brain processes reality, and it's mediated by neurotransmitters.
You know, what strikes me most is that it grounds the experience. When you talk about vibes, it feels so floaty and abstract. But when you talk about cortisol and oxytocin, it makes the spiritual experience heavy and real. It's in the meat of your body.
And the meat is a great way to put it. And this leads to my favorite historical tidbit in the entire source.
Yeah.
We have to talk about why a bottle of whiskey is called spirits.
Okay, I have always wondered about that. I just assumed it was some quirky, old-timey term.
Nope. There's a very literal scientific reason for it. It goes back to the origins of distillation alchemy, really. The ancients, they didn't have fMRI machines, but they were incredible observers.
Right.
They noticed that if you took grain or food and put it through fermentation and distillation, you could extract this clear, volatile liquid.
The essence of the plant.
The essence. And when a person drank this liquid, their consciousness would fundamentally change. The shy became bold, the sad became euphoric. To an ancient observer, it looked as though a spirit had literally entered the body and possessed it.
So it wasn't a metaphor.
It was not a metaphor.
No.
They believed the liquid contained a spirit that merged with your own. The source calls the tavern and the temple laboratories of altered states, which is just a brilliant comparison.
Wow.
In the tavern, you use ethanol. In the temple, you might use other methods. But the mechanism is always biological. It's always chemistry.
Let's break down the mechanism of ethanol for a second. It's not energy. It's a molecule crossing the blood-brain barrier and interacting with GABA receptors, right?
That's it, exactly. It binds to those GABA receptors, which are inhibitory, and it basically tells the brain to turn down the volume on anxiety and inhibition. At the same time, it might trigger some dopamine. The spirit in the bottle is a molecular key.
It unlocks a specific state of mind.
Pure chemistry.
Which brings us to the temple side of that equation, because the source argues religious rituals, the things we think of as symbolic or mystical, are actually just sophisticated technologies for chemical engineering.
This is the biohacking section of the deep dive, and it's just fascinating. If you strip away the theology and just look at the physiology, rituals are designed to alter blood chemistry and brain function.
Okay, give me an example. What about something like incense?
Incense, perfect. Every major religion uses it. Catholic Mass, Buddhist temples, Hindu pujas.
I always just figured that was to cover up the smell of people in the Middle Ages.
I mean, that might have been a nice side benefit. But the chemical function is potent. Your sense of smell, the olfactory nerve, is unique. It is the only sense that bypasses the thalamus and plugs directly into the limbic system.
The emotional center of the brain.
Direct input, no filter. So certain compounds in, say, frankincense have psychoactive molecules that can lower anxiety and make you feel more receptive. When you smell incense, you aren't just setting the mood.
You're chemically priming your brain for spiritual experience.
You're kind of dosing yourself, yeah.
Yeah.
Mildly. And then you have chanting. Repetitive prayer, mantras, singing hymns.
Is that just about focus, or is there a physiological trigger there too?
Oh, it's all about the vagus nerve and CO2.
Yeah.
When you chant, you slow your exhalation. You regulate your breath in a very specific rhythmic way. This stimulates the vagus nerve, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system.
The rest and digest mode. You're forcing your body out of fight or flight.
Exactly. And by changing the ratio of oxygen to carbon dioxide in your blood, you can actually induce mild trance states. That peace that passes understanding has a chemical signature. It's a shift in blood pH and vagal tone.
So the ancient chanters were really scientists. They were biohacking themselves into a state of communion.
The source calls them empirical scientists of the nervous system. I love that. They didn't know the word neurotransmitter, but they knew if they hummed a certain way for 20 minutes, the pain went away and God felt closer.
And we can't ignore the most extreme version of this, fasting.
Fasting is huge. Jesus in the desert, Ramadan, Yom Kippur, vision quests. Why? Because when you stop eating, your body burns through all its sugar. Once that's gone, the liver starts producing ketones to fuel the brain.
A metabolic switch to ketosis.
Ketosis. And a brain running on ketones operates differently. It's often described as a state of hyperclarity or sometimes even mild euphoria or hallucination. The visions that come after 40 days in the desert aren't some frequency alignment. They're a distinct metabolic state.
And then, of course, the source touches on what it calls the sacraments of chemistry, the heavy hitters. Peyote, ayahuasca, psilocybin.
The classic entheogens. And the word entheogen means generating the divine within. For thousands of years, cultures have used these plants as tools. And again, the mechanism is lock and key. Psilocybin looks almost exactly like serotonin. It slides into the 5-HT2A receptor and unlocks a cascade of information processing the brain normally filters out.
So the takeaway here is nothing in these practices is electrical. It's all the manipulation of matter.
Yes. We have been looking for the sacred in oscilloscopes, but it's been written in molecules the whole time.
Okay, but I can hear the skeptic, or maybe even the romantic, listening to this and thinking, you've just reduced my spiritual life to a bag of chemicals. You've taken the magic out of it. I'm just a meat sack.
That's the common fear, reductionism. But the source argues the exact opposite. It says that by understanding the chemistry, we don't reduce the magic, we connect it to the cosmos. And this is where we have to look up at the sun.
This was the part of the article that actually gave me chills. Because we hear solar energy and we think of solar panels, but the source frames the sun as the ultimate chemical reactor.
He corrects our terminology again. The sun isn't burning like a campfire. It's a nuclear fusion reactor. It is smashing hydrogen atoms together to create helium.
Right.
In that violent chemical marriage, photons are released.
Light,
which travels 93 million miles, hits a leaf on Earth, and triggers photosynthesis. And this is the miracle. That plant takes a photon, the energy of a dying star, and uses it to split water and knit together carbon dioxide into glucose.
Sugar, stored sunlight.
Stored chemical energy. So when you eat an apple, or you eat the animal that ate the grass, you are ingesting solar chemistry.
I see where this is going. The serotonin in my brain, the molecule that lets me feel peace, is built from the carbon and nitrogen in that food.
Precisely. You can't make serotonin from nothing. You need the building blocks. And those building blocks came from the food, which came from the plant, which came from the sun. So the light of the spirit isn't just a metaphor. The joy you feel is, quite literally, processed sunlight released through a chemical reaction in your brain.
We are downstream of chemistry ignited in stars. That's the quote.
It's profound. It means you're continuous with the universe. You aren't a separate thing looking at the world. You are the world reorganizing itself into a feeling.
That completely reframes the chemical argument. It's not cold and clinical. It's incredibly intimate. It implies this deep web of connection that vibes just can't touch. Chemistry is tangible. I am made of the same stuff as the star.
And it answers that so what question. If spirituality is chemical, then it is universal. It's democratic.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if spirituality relied on tuning into frequencies or being high vibe, then becomes a hierarchy, right? Some people are tuned in, others have static. It can get elitist.
Sure, I get that.
But if spirituality is chemical, if it's oxytocin and serotonin and breath, then everyone who has a body is already in the club.
If you have a bloodstream, you are a spiritual being. Period.
Exactly. You don't need to believe in the dogma to experience the effects. Incense works on an atheist just as well as on a believer because the olfactory bulb doesn't care about your theology. Fasting clears the mind of a skeptic because the liver works the same way for everyone.
The sacred isn't somewhere else. It's not in the ether. It's here, in the mechanics of your own life.
And the source calls this a shift from the age of wires, that fantasy of disembodied energy, to the age of clarity. We're reclaiming the physical world as the site of the miracle.
It's a validation of being human, isn't it? We spend so much time in spiritual circles trying to transcend the body, to get out of this heavy, dense form, to go be a light being.
Right.
But this argument says, no, the body is the point. The density is where the reaction happens.
The ancients were scientists with symbolic tongues. I love that description. They knew that matter mattered. They didn't try to escape her bodies. They used them through dance, drink, smoke, fasting to explore the edges of consciousness. They respected the chemistry.
So as we wrap this up, what's the practical takeaway for you? How does this change how you walk through the world tomorrow?
For me, it changes how I view my own state of mind. If I'm feeling disconnected or, low vibe, I don't try to just think my way out of it or manifest better energy. I look at the chemistry.
Yeah.
Have I slept? Have I eaten real food? Have I moved my body? Have I hugged someone to trigger that oxytocin?
It empowers you to be the alchemist of your own experience.
Yes. You're tending a garden, not fixing a radio. You need water, sunlight, nutrients. That's a much more compassionate way to treat yourself, I think.
And it suggests that the miracle isn't a magic trick. The miracle is the transformation. The fact that dead carbon and hydrogen can come together, fueled by a star, and create this sensation of awe, that is far more impressive to me than a ghost in a machine.
It's the structure of reality itself, and it's beautiful.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've talked about how we're chemical beings, defined by what we ingest and how we react, but chemistry is all about exchange. Reactions don't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
So think about your breath. You breathe out carbon dioxide. That CO2 is the physical weight of your body leaving you. You literally exhale your own mass. A tree breathes that in.
And turns your breath into its wood, its leaves.
It's fruit. And then someone else eats that fruit. If the spirit is chemical and chemistry is constantly flowing between us, the plants, and the atmosphere, then where do you actually end and the rest of the world begin?
The boundaries of the self become much more porous.
We're all just borrowing the same stardust for a little while, mixing it in our own internal laboratories, and then passing it on.
We are a single chemical reaction,
Mm-hmm.
seemingly separated by skin, but biologically united.
That's a lot to process. Maybe go take a walk, get some solar photons on your skin, and synthesize some vitamin D.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.